Namaskar, this is Akhilesh Bhargava. Welcome to Tit-Bits on Business and Finance with me. To state the very obvious, the Indian economy continues to be crisis-ridden because of Corona and the continued lockdown that it has enforced upon us. A quarter of a year's production is certainly lost, and because of that, we should be witnessing a contraction in India's GDP this year, and expansion, according to us, is completely ruled out. And this state of the economy, this state of affairs of the country's economy, finally will reflect on the state of the government's finances and those of corporates. And they are already depleting and deteriorating. After all, reality will catch on with every possible balance sheet. In our opinion, this reality will also catch up with the state of the stock markets, and the stock markets would continue to show a bearish tendency. Any kind of an irrational exuberance or irrational hope that we witness at times, because of which the market goes up, to us would certainly recede in the background, and what we see as the state of the economy would be the state of the market also. It has very often been said that this crisis that we face is a once in a century event, and that there is no comparison to it. In our opinion, there is a comparable available, and that would be the latest one that we witnessed, the global crisis of 2008, that also at that point of time was said to be a once in a lifetime event. To us, there are parallels to be drawn, and to us, if we compare both of them, we might just get a good comparative to situation to understand what is going to be the impact of the present crisis on the global economy and the markets. And for that, let us see the reaction and comments of Warren Buffett post 2008 crisis, or at that point of time, and now. Let's go to the facts of the events. In 2008, there was a global economic crisis. Banks in America had collapsed. Major banks like Washington Mutual, Lehman Brothers, Wachovia, and many others had simply disappeared. And the situation and condition of many big banks, including Citibank, JP Morgan, Chase Manhattan, etc., was extremely shaky. At that point of time, on one single day, on 29th of September 2008, the stock markets in USA fell by 7%, and $1.3 trillion of market cap was lost in US stock markets in a matter of a day. All big banks were in a crisis. All big brokerages were in a crisis. The government of USA pumped in $250 billion only to recapitalize banks and to ensure that there are no more further collapses. It also pumped in $700 billion by way of a troubled asset relief program in order to stabilize the financial and banking markets of America. And for that, it purchased the toxic assets of banks to the tune of $700 billion. There was mayhem and collapse all around. There was chaos all around. And in this chaos, at that point of time, Warren Buffett, the legendary investor from Omaha, did not lose his faith in USA. He did not let the chaos confuse him, and he did not sound uncertain. At that time, Mr. Buffett very famously remarked that the American factories, the American farmlands, and the American skills have not disappeared, and that things will come back to normal. And despite the fact that at that point of time, he is said to have lost $23 billion along with his company Berkshire Hathaway. Despite that, he was a prolific investor, of course, a very choosy investor. He pumped in about $15 billion in the market at that point of time by way of additional investments. $5 billion were given to Goldman Sachs to bail it out. Money was invested in Bank of America. It was invested in Mars. It was invested by way of a lifeline to General Electric, Dow Chemical, and many others. And reports say that Mr. Buffett made a profit of $10 billion because of these investments that he made in the 2008 crisis in America. He was not rattled by the chaos. He even made a statement at that point of time that bad news is an investor's best friend. That was his attitude. He was not certain. He had a very defined strategy in mind. That was 2008. Let's come to 2020 now. Mr. Warren Buffett is not a certain and sure man this time. He sits on a cash balance of $137 billion in this crisis, but unlike 2008, he is refusing to commit it into any kind of fresh investments. We are not seeing a confident and certain Warren Buffett this time. And this is coming across in the virtual address that he gave to investors and fund managers in the weekend after the annual general meeting of his company. It's a very popular event. It's like a pilgrimage for fund managers and investors and is held in Omaha every year. This year, it was a virtual address. And what were the main takeaways from it? The first one, Mr. Buffett said that he expressed a deep sense of concern of the immediate future as far as the global and the American economy is concerned. It should serve as a warning to investors and policy makers worldwide. He further said that he's not clear as to which way are we headed, which is very uncharacteristic of him. And because of that, in response to a number of questions, his answer was, I don't know. That again is very unlikely of him. In a long discussion, he said that the market will take decades to improve, not weeks, not months, not years. And for that, he discussed about the stock market crisis of 1929 to 1951, when it took 22 years for stock markets to come back to their normal highs. Thus, he says that the markets are going to be in a crisis for decades. They are not going to resume their highs. He also said that the world might profoundly change. None of us today are in a position to predict how much it will change, but mind his word, it will change profoundly. He further said that with fewer people traveling, job loss will take place in many industries, and that also explains why at this point of time, before the crisis blew out in the American stock markets, Mr. Warren Buffett sold his stock holding in all the major airlines of America that he held. Thus, he says that this situation of the travel industry, which sees fewer people traveling, is going to affect many others. Further, very interestingly and very surprisingly, Mr. Buffett said that this is a great time to borrow and not lend. And that is very prescient of the kind of state of affairs of banks that will come. They are going to be loaded with NPAs. He thus said that nobody knows what the markets will do in the coming period. He made an interesting point and he said that banks this time are far better prepared than they were in 2008. And then, like an optimistic American, he said, nothing can stop America and that you can bet on USA. Well, our response is, you can bet on India too. And that's because, to use Mr. Buffett's own famous quotation, the factories of India, the farmland of India, and the skills of India are not lost. They've not disappeared. The demand has not disappeared. The supply and demand both can be restored if we get our act together. And that is where the biggest if and biggest uncertainty lies. This is an opportunity for us. Unlike the state of affairs that Mr. Warren Buffett sees for the American economy, we would rather be optimistic of the state of affairs of the Indian economy. But that depends on a big if the government gets its act together. We hope it does. This is Akhilesh Bhargava signing off till we meet again. Namaskar.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.
If you like this video, please share it and we would love to hear your comments in the comments section down here. Also, please do like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter to get minute-to-minute news updates. For more such shows and videos, well, subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.